What event or incident happened at your job that caused a mass firing or mass quitting? I worked at a summer camp and one of our kitchen staff members was fired because a helicopter mom thought that he had been rude to her precious little snowflake. So the staff all got together and a strong majority agreed that the snowflake had been a rude little crap in most of the class's activities and deserved to be told to sit the frick down and eat what everyone else has. So about 2/3 of the staff marched down to the camp office and sent in a representative who told the directors that if he goes we all go. The operations director claimed we couldn't get solidarity and this was just a stunt by 2 or 3 of us, but when he came outside he found 25 of his staffers with bags packed and ready to roll. The kitchen staffer was serving waffles the next morning like nothing had happened. Aircraft manufacturing job, laid off after 9/11, the loss of the Twin Towers, by use of jets built by the company I worked for, lost hundreds of orders, slowed our rate and subsequently laid off 40% of our workforce over 3 years. I worked in a tech support call center for some very crappy online backup software. The supervisors treat you like computers. They don't care about your feelings or workload. They just wanted short call times. They didn't care that you were snowed in or bedridden. If you call out you're written up. The place had a 155% turnover rate 1 year from people having enough. This year is on track for being the same. Personally, I quit when they tried to stop my wedding by calling me 2 days before my wedding and saying my time off wasn't approved. The time that had been put into the system and approved 6 months prior. What sucks is that the business probably won't go under anytime soon. The product rips people off so much that the company is making bank. And the economy is so bad that they know for every call center rep that quits, there's a poor sap that needs to pay rent to take their place. I worked for an airline as a mechanic. We had a 727 cargo jet in our hangar for months undergoing a D-check, a massive inspection and maintenance task that involves removing and replacing a lot of aircraft skin and structure, as well as wiring, equipment, etc. It is basically a massive overhaul of the aircraft. While this task is ongoing, the aircraft is lifted up on jacks that fit under the wings, nose and tail of the aircraft. Anyway, back to the skins being replaced. Lots and lots of panels were riveted into place over the course of weeks. Lots. When the day came to lower the aircraft, because all of the work was done, someone in charge forgot to place anybody on the tail jack. As all of the other jacks were slowly lowered, the tail jack suddenly punctured the mounting point at the tail and basically opened the tail like a zipper. It sounded like machine gun fire as the sheared rivets sprayed across the hangar. Within minutes, every person standing in that hangar was fired. Just about everyone was hired back the next day, but at that moment, some pretty important people lost their jobs permanently. Not exactly the same, but once at a small company we had this one guy everybody hated who quit infrequently. He would usually go on a bender for a few days and then come back and go back to work like nothing had happened, and the owner didn't say anything about it and neither did he. He and the owner were both acerbic buttholes. He made money for the company, and the owner didn't work in the field with him, so I guess he didn't care. Anyway, one day this guy had pee off a whole bunch of people even more than usual, had a fight with the boss, and quit. 10 minutes later the whole field group, maybe 6 or 7 guys, assembles at the owner's office and says, "Hey, look, you hire the guy back again and we're all quitting." I run into the guy occasionally in the field. He's a contractor, like me. He learned nothing from the experience and is still a piece of crap. From what I understood, I caused a domino effect at a local big chain pizza place. The pizza place I worked at wasn't a full service restaurant, which they are mainly known for. It was a takeout or delivery only store, located in a shopping center with several other businesses. During the 2 years I worked there, we had gone through 3 store managers. The first manager was awesome. He was firm, strict, but fair. The second manager was a bit of a ditz. He went by the book, but you could tell his heart wasn't really in it. I think he preferred to be a driver than a manager. The third manager was an all-out bee. She mistreated the employees, especially the men, and she'd do things that only benefited her, not others. I was getting fed up. She had put a suggestion box outside her office. I wrote a very lengthy suggestion that she treat her employees with respect. She basically fired me. She said I'd resigned. I didn't care. I was no longer under her tyrannical rule. A friend of mine who still worked there called me a week later and told me 3 other people quit because, like me, they got tired of her crap. Later that same year, I quit late summer, about 2 weeks after Halloween. My parents ordered a pizza from that pizza place's major competitor. They asked me to give the driver the money, and when I did, it turned out to be a driver I knew from the other place. She told me she quit on Halloween night because she wanted to take her 4-year-old trick-or-treating. But the manager said no. Then she, the manager, took off early, in the middle of a freaking rush, to take her own 8-year-old daughter trick-or-treating. The driver that was now working for the competitor told me she threw her hat at the manager, told her to frick off, and quit right there. A year or 2 later, I ran into the old assistant manager, who was now working at an Arby's. She told me many others had quit, and that manager was no longer there. She and her husband were fired, due to stealing money from that store. Karma, it works. B. Domino effect. Big chain pizza place. Some workers tried to organize a union in a manufacturing plant I worked in. They all got fired within a week for other reasons. Also, random drug test day. 7 years back we had an office Olympics. Each team had to come up with a team name and a flag for their team. A team chose the name Team Shockers. They made a flag with 2 hands doing the shocker sign. They called me in, office pervert, and showed me the flag. I told them you can't put that out. The guys said we checked with the team manager and he said it was okay. It was up for over a week with no problems. Apparently one of the older office ladies asked someone what it meant. All heck broke loose. The flag was taken down pretty quickly. HR got involved. 3 employees and the manager were fired. They had all been with the company about 10 years. Worst part was we didn't even get to compete in the office Olympics. Lots of shocker jokes since that happened. The payroll supervisor embezzled millions from a non-profit organization for mentally disabled people and really fricked us over. A friend I work with used to have a job with a large hardware store chain in the Midwestern US when he was out of high school. He got to go to different stores and try to steal stuff without getting caught. If he got caught he had an ID number and the store chain owner's personal phone number for emergencies. He told me about the time he went into one store and grabbed a couple of things and nonchalantly walked out. He wasn't caught, so he set the items in his rental car and went back. This time he stuffed a couple of things under his shirt. Nobody noticed. The cashier waved. The 3rd time, he went in and got something big that took 2 arms to carry. Nobody said anything as he walked out the door. So the 4th time, and several times after that, he got a cart and got big stuff, like a roll of carpet and a chandelier, and wheeled them out, and the employees actually helped him with all of it. Finally, he was standing there and it was 8 PM, and he had a parking space full of stolen crap in the parking lot, and nobody had said anything. So he called the store owner directly and told him what had happened over the course of the day. My friend said you could hear the angry silence on the phone for about 30 seconds. The owner told him to rent a U-Haul and put all the stuff in the U-Haul, and then get a hotel room for the night. The owner then said he would be there first thing in the morning. The owner walked into the store the next day and promptly fired everyone who my friend had seen or interacted with who hadn't followed security protocol, and fired the manager and assistant manager as well. My brother used to work at a sushi restaurant and was on the sushi line. The owner had been pretty hands off the entire time my brother was there and had basically allowed the managers to run the restaurant, and it was doing pretty well. Always busy and got generally good reviews. One day, the owner stepped back in and decided to take control again. After being out of the picture for over 2 years, he decided that he needed to clean house and fired half of the managers. Everyone was pissed about it, but decided to stick around still. A couple days later the owner decides to fire 5 out of his 7 sushi chefs, including my brother. The 2 remaining sushi chefs quit on the spot when they found out about it, and by the end of the day all the remaining managers, all the remaining kitchen staff, and almost all the servers had quit. The owner had to shut the restaurant down until he could hire new staff. The problem with that was that this happened in a relatively small town and all the restaurant workers had heard about what happened, so nobody was applying to work there. He ended up having to close the restaurant. My brother now works at a much fancier sushi restaurant. I did work for a software development company. The guy who was the current CEO, you could tell, really cared about the company and the people who worked there. But my boss got along with him. Heck, all of the senior positions and team leads got along with him great. Heck, everyone did, all around nice guy. Well, there was another man on the board of directors who was without a doubt in my mind legitimately bipolar. Previously this didn't matter so much as nobody really reported to him or did anything with him aside from an occasional interaction, so it really didn't matter much. You'd sometimes hear him going off about something or another in a public fit of rage, but it didn't really affect anyone since he actually had little influence on the work that was done there. Well, over time the bipolar guy ended up with more money and bought the aging CEO out of the company and took the reins. I mean, the guy was nearing his mid-70s at least. You can't blame him for wanting out. I'm sure he has retired very comfortably at this point. Now, you had very intelligent and smart individuals leading pretty much all of the teams that worked there, and their team members looked up to them without a doubt, who all would now be reporting to the bipolar guy. Needless to say, this didn't last very long and they started leaving very quickly. You can't take incredibly talented employees and expect them to report to somebody who they'll constantly be wondering if they'll be talking to Jekyll or Hyde that morning. Over the span of about a month, all of the team leads left, including my boss and roughly 40 employees out of the 80-ish that worked there. There was a very drastic change of culture from what used to be a laid-back professional environment of mutual respect for everyone to one of accountability and corporate formality. This also started to become a penny-pinching era, and some of the devs were shafted on their overtime pay, which led to another exodus of about 10 more of them. It was honestly weird how quickly the office became a ghost town, although the whole thing amazed me quite a bit at how large of an impact one person in leadership can have. Just look at Arthur T. DeMaulis. His ousting almost killed a grocery chain called Market Basket in the Northeast. I am a farmer sales rep. Before I started, they installed GPS devices on the cars in order to make sure the reps were doing their work. This did not go over well with many of the older reps, and quite a bit of our sales force quit. However, our company has been growing quite a bit since, so I guess it worked. Yeah, I see the company's point. I mean, who's to say that co-worker of yours isn't running around with his psychic friend solving crimes when he should be on his route? Misuse of a company car too. When I was in college, I worked at a 7-Eleven to make ends meet. The store manager, who'd been on duty for 24 years, was fired for trumped up reasons just 3 months before she would have been eligible for pension from the company, just so that the district manager could get a raise for keeping costs down. The reason given was a drop in sales over the summer that she was held accountable for. But since this was a college town, this dip in sales happened every summer as the town emptied out. Pretty much everyone who worked for her quit in protest. Web development gig. Just 12 employees. Small firm, but about 200 clients that paid a monthly fee of €500, and they streamed in the necessary amount of work that would keep us all busy. A good 40-hour job for everyone involved. €100 a month. Basically for free. At €200 per person per hour for custom work. We made crazy money. Practically no costs, and, well, let's summarize the deal here. The owner got himself a brand new Porsche, and then another, and then a Ferrari. He didn't sell cars, he just kept them. He bought himself a huge house with garage boxes capable of storing 20 cars or so. He was flaunting his wealth. So naturally, he was hesitant to hire new employees. They take time to train, and that means he has to pay more money to someone else every month. He didn't make the connection that we'd be able to do more work. So he basically ramped up our workload. We went to 44 hours without much complaint. We didn't know where the work was coming from, but a boost in sales was probably it, right? Let's be happy. More money is good for all of us. Then 47 hours on average. And then 50, 55, 60. Months went by and no new people joined. Nobody got a raise. Nobody got their overtime paid for. Nobody was happy. Nobody was happy. So the tech lead decided he would leave. Then his best friend in the office did, too. Then I did, too. Then the guys I trained did, too. Then all of the others did, too. And all of this was decided within 1 hour. It was supposed to be a retrospective Scrum session, but it turned out to be a let's quit meet. We handed in our resignation to him on the spot the very same day, and the 12 of us started a new company by ourselves. We let LinkedIn do its magic. More than 100 customers noticed us all getting together in our own company, and more than 100 customers joined us. It took a few months and we had pretty much all customers working with us. Our old boss was still filthy rich at that point, but he had huge costs each month, too. Turns out, he didn't really buy all those cars that had cost money, he just leased them. Imagine the costs of 15 or so luxury sports cars every month, and the cost of the house he was renting every month. The idiot didn't buy anything because that'd make him responsible for maintaining all that crap. 3 years later he was bankrupted, and that was 5 years ago. Last I heard he's an accountant somewhere. He's also remarried. His ex-wife was bloody hot. His new one, a great personality. Having had a career in luxury real estate, I can assure you that most flaunters are leasing and renting everything they touch. My boss had 4 houses and 3 luxury cars, all rented, all leased. Imagine her embarrassment when the actual owner of her downtown mansion decided to sell and asked someone else to list it. That for sale sign looked fantastic with someone else's name and company on it. Worked at a Toyota dealership. New racist manager was brought in from corporate headquarters. Within a year he got rid of everyone that was black and Hispanic. I used to work at a little town grocery store. One day while working in the bakery our manager comes in looking freaked out. After much prodding it turns out most of the upfront staff have all quit. The store manager was being stalked by an employee who he cheated with. He just showed up to call it quits and most of the main staff went with him. Used to work in retail and a girl and guy started doing inappropriate things in our meat cooler. People started finding out after the first girl got upset after the guy took another girl in there. All 3 were fired for putting meat in the meat cooler. I worked for sushi, a sushi chain out of San Antonio with 8 stores across San Antonio, Austin, and the Dallas area. About 2 years ago on a Thursday night right around closing time every single kitchen employee across all 8 stores walked out. Every single chef, cook, prep cook, even the dishwashers. The owner is from Mexico, and he had hired another fellow from Mexico to be the head chef of the company. Pretty sure both of their names are public record, but I'll leave them out, Jake. So corporate chef bro goes about getting jobs for all of his family and buddies back in Mexico. As the company expanded over 10 years from 1 store to 8 he gave virtually all of the head chef positions at all 8 stores to his brothers and brothers-in-law. They in turn hired people they knew back home, cousins, uncles, in-laws, etc. See where this is going? It gets better. In your typical restaurant there's a pretty firm division between front of house and back of house, with a general manager, GM, presiding over all. Not so in ye old sushi. The GM couldn't tell the head chef crap. The kitchen was solely answerable to corporate chef bro and then to the owner. Eventually ICE decided to do an audit of the company. Word gets to corporate chef bro, who is obviously not thrilled that a bunch of his family and friends will be out of work. He is informed that current chefs will be training new chefs to replace them. This notwithstanding long forgotten empty promises that had been made to chefs' kitchen staff about getting them work visas permits. So, not willing to train their replacements and fearful that ICE could come at any moment, they decided upon a date and set about finding gainful employment elsewhere. On the chosen night many of them also took all of the various sauces that are used on the rolls and dumped them in the streets. Why? So corporate couldn't reverse engineer them. Cause only the chefs knew the recipes. There was no corporate record of any of the recipes. LOL. In the days and weeks that followed the company scrambled to reverse engineer the signature sauces and the entire menu, along with hiring and training completely new kitchen staff. The new chefs were for the most part slower and more expensive, but that's another story for another time. Does Amazon count as an event for the murder of Borders books and music? That being said, Borders Europe had no idea how to staff a company, how 40-60% coupons can impact their bottom line, and how to merchandise a store. RIP. Speaking as someone who worked for Borders, and actually does merchandising for a very respected company. If I recall correctly, they also sold the rights to borders.com to Amazon, so it would redirect you to Amazon if you went to their website. They actively gave their competitor customers. Not me, but the owner of the company I work for told me this story. When he was back in high school, a friend of his worked at Shoney's and the whole crew one night got fired because someone crapped in the ice machine. Worked for a company that dealt in certain shady financial sector. We all questioned the legitimacy of it, and management assured all 450 plus workers that it was perfectly legal. Few months after I had left the company, I get a text. Everyone was let go in one morning because the government shut them down for illegal practices. No severance packages or help in finding a new job for anyone. When I was 16, I started a job at a grocery store working in the grocery department, stocking shelves. We had a large crew, 15-20 crew members every night. My first night there, I walked into the back room to find all of them opening cases of concentrated cans of Welch's grape juice. They then were throwing them against a wall up some stairs. It made massive holes and the walls were stained purple. I remember a kid handing me a can and I just went, no thanks. I have to go see the manager for training. I never told anyone about it, since it was my first day and all. As I worked there, I noticed they were all getting food from the deli that clerks weren't weighing, making it something small like 0.02 cents for a stack of meat. Even the cashiers were in on it, pretending to scan items and not doing it. One night I was walking back to my car and looked above the store to see a whole mess of them on top. They climbed a dumpster to reach roof access. They started throwing 3L bottles of soda off the roof right into the parking lot and entryway. Some dude nearly got nailed and fell to the ground. Then he ran full speed inside and told the manager. The workers escaped. They had it on camera but couldn't tell who the people were. They questioned every employee in the store. Thankfully they never made it to me, as one of the culprits confessed. He also implicated every single employee that was part of the grape incident, soda incident, and stealing. They mostly cared about stealing. All in all, 30 employees were fired on a single day. In the grocery department we went from 20 people to 3. The only people left were me and a girl that started the same day, and some older guy. Went from zero seniority to top part-time seniority. It was wacky. Never seen anything like it since. I used to work in fast food. The regional manager hired about a dozen new workers but didn't run any background checks until 9 months later. The new hires were hard workers and pulled their weight. After the background checks were sent, every new hire was fired. They all had prior convictions. They left and so did the productivity. It was bad. This will probably get buried, but I have to share this because the Red Lobster I cook at is currently embroiled in chaos. Everyone knows restaurants have high turnover, right? Crazy places that suck to work at, people quit a lot. It's a given. Well, in the past 10 days all of my managers have quit, except for one who put in his 2 weeks. 1.5 weeks ago, one of my bosses decided to go back to school. Another one got into an argument with the GM and walked out. The GM himself walked out 2 days later, giving some vague explanation about his bosses being buttholes. So, to be clear, the only manager left in the entire store is the one who already has a new job lined up and is planning on quitting this week. So approximately nobody gives a frick right now. I could steal thousands of dollars of shrimp, fish, steak and lobster meat tonight if I wanted to, and I wouldn't get caught because there's nobody to do thorough inventory or just notice that the cook is pulling boxes of shrimp out of the freezer. I could hide rubber duckies all over the store and cover the line in flamboyant confetti if I felt like it. All I have to do is answer to myself and my fellow employees. It's pretty great. Apparently shortly before I joined, my line manager gave a speech to his team about following their dreams. 6 people decided to do that and handed in their notices. He's not allowed to give speeches anymore. I work at a corporation that deals with wholesale furniture. When the economy tanked, we took a hit. Like, 1 in 2 people was let go and the locations we service in the nation were close to halved. Yearly raises were ceased for the next 7 years. Just this past August, we all received word that raises were going to be brought back. Now we still only service about 1/2 of what we originally worked with, but that's also due to today's consumer, who wants it off the internet, not out of a store. My brother had a company making vinyl screen protectors for electronic devices. I was brought in to run manufacturing, customer service, and quality control. I basically was in charge of everything besides the sales department. After working there for 3 years, I had assembled a great team. 35 people, everything ran smoothly, and the company was making a hefty profit. My brother sold off his ownership in the company to take a higher level job with one of our product distributors. After he had left, people started stepping on my toes and changing rules and benefits I had arranged for my department. One day I had had enough, packed everything from my desk into my mini fridge and walked out. Once word got out that I had quit, 27 other people packed up and did the same. 6 months later and still struggling to replace my team with temp workers, the business folded. Customers weren't receiving orders, and when they did, they were wrong or damaged. They called me 2 months after I left and offered my job back with double the pay, and I refused. My BF worked at a finance company in Manhattan. He's a web developer. Anyway, his boss announced his wife was pregnant. Barely 3 weeks later he was fired. A woman came back from maternity leave and was fired shortly after. They give awesome severance packages and make them sign a waiver saying they won't sue or talk about it. My BF and half a dozen others have since quit despite the high salaries. I guess half a dozen isn't mass, but the company is startup and barely 40 people. I never worked there, but there's a chain of grocery stores called Market Baskets near me. It's family owned, and there was a dispute where the cousin came in and fired the very beloved CEO of that company. As a result, the employees and suppliers went on strike and quit. I went there during the middle of this and the store was still open, but it looked like a ghost town. No fresh produce or meat and hardly any staff. It was a decent sized story, and a very big success story for businesses that care about their employees and strong leadership. It's actually a great place to get groceries too. I find that they have a better selection of certain things and lower prices than their main competitor around here, New Hampshire. Boss sexually harassed 2 girls. On the same day, he moved from one to the other after the first one told him she wasn't interested in having sex with him or being his mistress. After reading some of these posts, I feel like I could be a pretty good manager by realizing that happy employees do good work, assemble a good team, treat everyone with respect, let them do the jobs you've hired them for, and desk with them directly and honestly, and everyone benefits from it. My job currently got bought out by a new owner. This guy is an all-round fuckwit who cuts corners and tries to save money by reusing old ingredients, forcing us to not throw out our food. Pretty much just everything bad he could do, he is doing it. Since he took over around 3 months ago, 8 people have quit and 3 more ready to go. All round crappy guy. This will probably be buried, but here goes. I was working as an last GM at a family restaurant chain. Basically noon to midnight 5 days a week. I had hired, trained, and retained a great staff. In a normal restaurant, most of your staff are college students or adults, and maybe 10% or less are in high school, but not with us. Since we didn't serve alcohol, anyone over 16 could be a server or any other job with us, and that was most of our staff. When I turned in my notice and let the staff know, the effect was immediate. 3 servers who had planned to work for us through college turned in notice that they'd be leaving in a month. 2 more transferred to locations closer to their homes, and my 5-night closer quit and took a job in a pediatric office. In the kitchen we lost 3 5-night cooks, 2 5-night prep dessert salad saucier guys, and a busser. We also lost 3 carry-out hostesses. This all happened in a period of 4 weeks from my last day or coinciding with it. My replacement quit after 2 months and took a job as a cook. My GM was forced to retire by the end of the year. The new GM got caught stealing and went to jail. So, not saying I was a linchpin, but I once worked for a small bank. Turns out the CEO was hiding money in strange places, making unqualified low interest rate loans to friends, and just generally using the bank as his personal slush fund. Well, one day the feds came in, installed a temporary CEO and started firing, and in some cases charging, several of the senior staff. A few did jail time. I got called in by the temp CEO who I'd never met before. It was a day off for me. and arrived just as they were telling somebody else they had called in that their services we no longer needed. I was 100% sure that I was going to be the next to get the axe. Turns out, though, that they just wanted to make sure I was okay with doing extra hours while everything got settled down. Funny thing was, with about 6 employees gone we never noticed any additional work, so I guess they weren't really doing much in the first place. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.